when I look back at my schooling, and I remember so clearly, so many times being like, this is bullshit. Why am I, this is bullshit. What is this, right? And okay, I'm just going to tick through it and just do it and just do it. It works, man. Like having some sort of a technique foundation to go back to one and to know that that one is real, and to go from that step, I think is absolutely gold.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Leonardo Nam is an actor. He sat down with me in cyberspace to talk about the work. If it's not too annoying, can you tell the story in Australia of getting off the bus and choosing whether to go right or left? And start by telling us about your life on that day, where you were in your life, where you were in your creative life. Did you have, the creative muscles? Were they there? Were they atrophied? Were they not developed yet? Like, where were you in all that on that day?
Wow. Well, it was a Tuesday. Well, I don't remember that. But I do remember very much so specifically that moment. I remember I was sitting next to a window behind the second, how in the bus there's the front door and then there's the back door. I was sitting behind there. And I remember I was in a place of seeking. I was very clear about that because at the end of the first year of architecture school, not the end, but kind of getting to the second half of it. And I had already been working with a mentor of mine, Annie Swan in Sydney. And I kind of worked with her probably from the age of 15. And previous to that, I had my first kind of inkling into powerful medium that we have of storytelling and drama and what have you was with another lady called Miss Hopwood. And that was at 12. I did public speaking, and at 12 I was exposed to King Lear and Shakespeare. And I remember back then there already was that seed of, oh, fuck, why is this like, this dude and this language connecting to me, I was like, this is really weird. And I understood that, it's about this old grandpa and about that. And I was like, that's weird that it kind of connects with me. So I kind of followed that thread, through ever since I was kind of 12 and 13, since it kind of landed in my lap in a way. And my brother's a dancer and is now a choreographer and a director in London. Back then, he was very much into dance. And so I wasn't that great of a dancer. My sister was a good dancer too, but I really enjoyed this is the first time that I was like, oh, this thing of performing, but in this way is something that is really kind of resonates with me. And I'd gone to a high school that was very science and technology focused. And I had created a class with the English teacher for drama for finals. And so I was already in this space of like, oh, if I talk to people about this, people were responsive. I felt support from my school, which I'm so grateful that they did. So then cut to, I'm in architecture school. I'm thinking, well, I really appreciate design. I appreciate the human interaction. And that's when I look back now, I can see, oh, I was really interested in the human part of it. I'm on that bus and there was this very strange feeling of, I don't know if this is the right place that I need to be. And I just had this feeling. And so I was seeking for another way. And so I remember getting off that bus and I was going to architecture school. And mind you, there's so much physics in architecture school I had no idea about. So I get off the bus, and I had been looking at other people on that bus, and it was obviously the bus that goes via the university, but not everyone gets off, right? Not everyone's on that track to go to university. There are other people going to work. I'm thinking, what are they all doing? Are they happy? Isn't the right word, but are they feeling fulfilled? Have they had this feeling for them? And so I get off the bus, and it was called the Red Center, the architecture school. And I looked over to the left, and I was like, oh, okay. And I had to cross the street. But then NIDA, which is the National Institute of Dramatic Arts, which was, I guess, the Juilliard of Australia. I got off that bus, and I remember thinking, fuck, I had this feeling I got to go right. I got to go right, but I had to go left to go to school. And that was one of those moments, that feeling stayed with me all day. Like I needed to go back. I need to go right. I need to go right. And so later that day, I then found out about the auditions that they have, their audition process to get in. I never looked at it previous to university. I just, for some reason, never thought that was going to be what I was going to do, go to that school anyway. And one of the big kind of rumors was they only take students that are older. You know, I was 18 years old. I'm like, yeah, you know, when you're in your 20s, then, you know, you should apply. So I looked it up. I discovered that I had to audition. And then I secretly did. I mean, secretly, I didn't hide it from anyone, but I didn't share it. I knew this is something that I wanted to do. And I understood the feeling of going for it. Like once I was on track with that, I knew it was like a positive, expansive feeling. So I was like, oh, I want more of that. I want more of that. And it was a similar feeling that I had when I created that drama class in school for my finals. And it was a similar feeling to the feeling I had earlier when I first kind of went into Miss Hopwood's class and saw and discovered Shakespeare and performing. And it was that same feeling of kind of feeling like, yes, I need to push, but it feels aligned better than like fighting. And so I found out about it. I went in and auditioned for them. And I told my mentor that I was working with and still work with, and she was like, go for it. You know, she knew this was a part of what I was kind of discovering about myself. And whether I'd go all the way, that was going to be up to me. But she was someone that really was in my corner. And then I go in, I audition, I get through to the final round. And I remember first of all, I'm already like, I can't believe this is happening. So I get to the final round, and you had to do three performances. You do two, then there was a lunch break, and then there was a third. And you know, I had my, you know, Midsummer Night's Dream Puck speech ready. I'm like ready to go. I had this other, you know, monologue that I did, and I just done it, and I was going to do the Puck speech right after lunch, and I remember sitting down because we were all sitting down and people were performing, and when the break happened, they called you in one at a time during your lunch break, and you talked to the head of the school. And I remember they said to me, Leo, you need to go have an orgy. And I'm like, what? What's going on? What? No, I was kind of like, all right, what does that mean? And they were like, you need to experience life. You have the heart, but you need the scars for it too. And you have what it takes, but you just need that. And I was like, okay, you know, and young and arrogant, I guess. I was like, but I made it here. What you talking about, right? What you talking about? I got my puck in my back pocket. Like, here we go. And he said to me, why don't you sit down? Now that we've had this conversation, I want you to go back out there and I want you to listen with this lens now. And I was like, okay. And I went up last. I remember thinking, okay, so I'm listening to these people. And now that I look back, I recognize a big part of what it was is I remember I laughed a lot after I got out of after lunch. And there was a levity and there was a sense of being able to, in a way, involve themselves and laugh at themselves. There was an element of that in, I guess, their performances. And that's something I've never forgotten about. It really was so eye-opening for me to experience that, to see that. But, when I was in that moment, I thought, I just thought it was kind of, stuff was funny. And, I love it. This is my jam. This is my people. They understand. And like, okay. So then I do my performance. I, go along with my day. And I should also mention, though, that on this day of the final callback, it was the same day as a final for like my construction class in architecture. And you can imagine construction, literally architecture, it doesn't get bigger than that. That and physics, right? So
it's very important that you be there.
Yeah, very.
For that.
I would think, and I skipped it. I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, this opportunity is here for me now. I'm already kind of struggling with the bulk of architecture school. I enjoy very much so certain elements of it, but is this going to be for me? And so I was pretty sure that I wasn't going to go further down that path. So I, was like, well, I'm going down this other way. And I auditioned, and then I remember I got word that I didn't get in. And I spoke to my mentor, and I thought she was going to, be all bummed. And she was like, great, Leo, great. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I'm like, so disheartened. She's like, great. You have that moment now that you can do what you want to do with it. And I'm like, okay. And then she said, okay, let's go back to what you want to do. Where in the world do you want to go to do this? And where is the best? And I thought, oh, I get what you're saying. And she was like, yep. You either go to London or you go to New York.
Yeah.
Like, skip LA. Go to London, go to New York, go get your life, go get your craft, go get it. She was like, LA will always be there and it will bring you there, but you cannot go there untrained. You cannot go there right now. Best words ever. Because 2 weeks after that, I bought my flight and I, packed my bags up, said bye to everyone, and I was off to New York City.
Wow. And you had said that your mom wasn't supportive necessarily in this, and it wasn't out of any kind of neglect as a mother or any kind of it was just out of the sheer lack of understanding of a creative life like this, right?
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you, like, how did you get your support? But I think I got my answer. Like, this woman really was the support that you needed, the push you needed. It framed this challenging moment not as a negative that could drive somebody in thinking that they're not going to make it. Mm-hmm. Framed it into like, now you need to push it harder and go make a crazy decision now because you made that step. You took that step.
It was like, keep going. And I needed someone in my life that had that life experience to say, you go, you leap, and it's there for you. And so, you know, my parents definitely did not know anyone that was in this industry. I didn't know anyone that was in this industry. We, you know, having moved to Australia from Argentina, and then originally my parents had come from Korea, like this immigrant life and starting anew and what have you was definitely the world that I kind of was exposed to in both Argentina and Australia. But one thing that my family has definitely instilled in me is this idea of hope, and that hope is out there, that you go out there and you can create the life that you want, not only the life that you're born into, you can create it. And so even though at the time when I told them, hey, you know, I want to live this life of being an actor and a creator, they didn't know what that was, and they were kind of, you know, freaked out by that. I do have to say though, I am very lucky that my older brother was a dancer, and so that already broke the mold. So that already was a different path. And so to have someone that, you know, then is a dancer, and they're like, what do you mean you're going to dance? And that's how you're going to like pay for a house and like have kids? Like, what do you mean? And then, you know, at least with an actor, they're like, okay, there's a screen there, or there's a TV there, and you know, that's what they do. And so it really was my my mentor that really helped me galvanize, you know, that artist in me, and say, no matter what, I answer to that soul, that myself, in the depths of the depths. And now that years have gone by, and you know, I have a very good relationship with my mum, and it's gotten better really because I made that decision. Because if I look back then, like my relationship with my folks was not good. Part of going, that also was the allure for me to go to another country or to go to another city, was also to break free, right? And I definitely needed that, you know. And so when I went to New York, I wanted to, like, in a way, like repaint my own life, and I'm so grateful that I did. But you know, now that when I talk to my folks and I talk to my mom, she really is such a champion for me now, and I'm so grateful for that. You know, for a long time it was she just talked about the experiences that she had seen in her life. She goes, I've lived, you know, at that time she was probably 50 or 55, like I've seen this many years and of the world. I haven't seen a face like yours in the roles and the positions that you are talking to me about. I haven't seen that. So what are you talking about? So there is that. And I can very much appreciate that. You know, she comes from a very practical sensibility. But now I can definitely appreciate, you know, I've got kids now. And so people say to me like, oh yeah, so you know, I've got twins, but they're like, yeah, they're going to be actors. I'm like, are you kidding me? No.
You have to do it. It's part of parenthood, right? You have to deny them that.
Deny the thing which you did. Exactly. You get it.
Almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
My friend invited me to audit her class she was in, acting class. And I go there, and it's in the basement, and this guy goes up and does his scene, and it was almost entirely wordless. He was sprinkling these rose petals everywhere. Okay, you're laughing. I'm glad you have a memory. There was something special about this. I turned to my other friend who was with me. We were both actually looking to cast. We were trying to do something, and we were casting. So I went to film school. At that point, this was like 5 years out of film school. Me and this friend were trying to finally do this project that we were trying to do. He's an actor and a producer, and I was director. And so we were there looking at actors. We weren't there looking to see if we wanted to do the class. We were there looking for actors, and there was something about this guy and the way he was doing this that was like inventive, like creative. And that's the word that was interesting for me, because I didn't know if that was in this interpretive art of acting, that there was a room for creativity. But this is what was going on in that moment. And I said to my friend Heidi, I said, who is that guy? And she's like, that's my friend Leo.
Heidi Beaver?
That's right.
Heidi, I love her.
So this is really interesting that I'm talking to you, because I saw you in HB Studio.
Yeah, man.
On that day, doing that scene, and I really remembered that. And I wonder if you didn't make it, would I remember that? And I swear to you, I think I would. I would be thinking, where is that guy? That guy had something.
Here I am.
And so
wow.
Then you guys went away, and you made a lot of good friends in there. I don't know if you're still friends with these people, like Krista.
Yeah, Krista, yeah.
Okay. So you guys go away and you make this little film. I mean, not in a real serious way, just as an acting exercise, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so you guys had me edit it. You weren't really involved with that.
No, whoa.
Yeah. So I edited that. So there I am watching your work then in this little thing, this little video. But me and Heidi, and by the way, Heidi, I respect Heidi's creativity so much, and her I think she's a brilliant artist all around. But me and her were laughing our ass off watching you in this. I mean, we couldn't stop laughing at just these things, and Heidi kept pointing them out. I'm like, I'm watching. I'm like, this is amazing. And again, the word is inventive. So, I mean, just cut to today. I mean, there's this little family movie that just came out called The Yes Day.
Yeah.
And you have a little scene in it, but you are still inventing. You're still, I mean, there's this little moment that you do with this coffee cup in your eyes.
I'm so
I mean, I'm like, there it is. He still has it. The Hollywood didn't knock this out of this guy. He's still creating. Yeah, I wanted to surprise you with that.
Yo, you can pinpoint that performance. I remember it was Edward Morehouse's class, and it was all silent. It's when you're speaking to yourself. And it was, I had to create something where I'm speaking to myself. And it was, I decided that I'm going to have a seduction.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So I came in and
it captivated the room, man. Usually you're cringing watching you're watching students, or you were at least saying, "Oh, all right, they're getting it."
Yeah.
This was like a captivation. You captivated the room. But where does that come from? I mean, is this something that you just have, you're born with? Is this something that you cultivate? You know what I mean? Like this is, like I just said, I just saw it in a movie today that you're in. I mean, this is like and a lot of actors are good. They don't necessarily have that particular thing, which I think is an inventive and creative bone. But tell me about where you think that is coming from. Is that just instinct? Is that just your humor? Or is that something that you cultivate and has been cultivated throughout all these years since I saw you in that room?
Man, like, I've got to say, that is, over the years, I remember I've been able to, from Australia, when I remember working with Annie Swan, trying to identify moments where you play. You know, the whole thing can be seen as play, and it is, but yes. What I've definitely understood is that, you know, it's almost like a structured improv. So you have these words and, you know, this scenario and the scene structurally has to go there, but there are these little gaps of moments in between. And if you can, and I actually learned this, a lot of this part from Sigourney Weaver when I worked with her in her theater company in New York, and subsequently worked with her again many years later on film. But I remember watching, I knew what it was like to do it, but I remember watching Sigourney do it, where she went piece by piece by piece, piece, and kind of was able to analyze that. So for me, you know, when you talk about that scene in Yesterday, I remember talking to the director Miguel, and he's like, okay, well, now let's just have fun. And, you know, and Jen Garner was wonderful, so fun to play with. And he goes to me, I said to him, I want to pick up the cup. I want to have like this whole with the cup. And he was like, but how are we going to see the rest of it? I was like, well, I just will have it just so that my eyes can. And he was like, okay. And so he was kind of like a little iffy about it. And I'm so glad it's in the film, because it's one of those moments. But, you know, it really is I think it's if you work with someone that allows that space, because it's always in me, and I think it's in anyone that kind of performs, but it's in me that you want to play. And so if you're in an environment that where they're conducive to creation and to play, and when you throw something out, they throw it back at you, that to me is just gold. I can do that all day. And Jen Garner, she does that. And Naomi, the other teacher that I was sitting with, she has that too. And with Miguel as well, he kind of encouraged that. So I'm so glad that I was in an environment like that really kind of allowed that to happen. Because, you know, to be frank, I've been in other situations where it's been the opposite. They're like, the more cardboard you can make it, the better for them. And that's just so like, shoot me. Are you kidding me? I actually had a moment like that, you know, standing on top of a rooftop in downtown LA. And I was doing this one scene for this project. And I remember thinking like, what have I done? This director was like, just wanted everything to be so stereotypical, so boring. And I was like, oh my God, what decision have I made in my life that's brought me here? So I am so glad to have.
But what do you do in those moments to just survive that, or to make that be the best it could be? I mean, it seems so despairing.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, I mean, like you might even think like, even if I do something that's alive right now, I don't trust him to even pick it when he puts it together. I mean, like there's so much that you must feel so untrusting in that moment, like, you know. But how do you survive that is there a trick you do to just try and get back to yourself?
To be honest, what it is for me is I go back to, in a way, a stillness that you can get caught up in that moment of like, I want to do this, or will they let me do this? And then you start to give other people power. And then I start to, and I can go into that place of like, oh, then you spiral into a certain, like a rabbit hole of darkness about yourself. And so what I have learned to do when I have those moments is to take a moment when you can and just get silent, like get still. You know, I meditate. That's something that I do in my life that's helped me, because, you know, at the end of the day, one of the big things that I learned about even when I moved to New York or wherever else in the world now, you know, LA, now in San Diego and stuff, no matter where you go, there you are. So that has really held, you know, prominent in my life. And so when those moments happen, if I am able to get to a stillness, then that kind of changes my perspective. And then I'm able to retouch the creativity, retouch the play, and reframe it in that way. If I can do that, then that is a blessing. You know, not to say that that's always possible, but, you know, it's kind of like, and one of those, how I came to that realization actually was, I remember there was an interview, I think it was Laurence Olivier, and he talked about how on stage, how does he, you know, is each performance, you know, absolute knockout, you know, he's a legend at this time and he's being interviewed, and he says, no, like, if I get one or two performances where I can feel like that was like really connected and really the whole way through, like, that's a miracle. They said, well, what do you do? And he said, well, it actually comes down to something as simple as he would lift his shoulders and then drop. And he goes, you do that in that space where you go, this, okay, I can recognize this stuff is happening. For whatever reason, it's not connecting right now. Instead of pushing to do it and to get it, he took that step back, and, you know, if he could in rehearsal, he'd stop and then you'd stretch, or you'd go for a walk, you'd do something. So for him, he kind of shrunk it down to doing a shoulder shrug. And you do a shoulder shrug, and then that's like a muscle memory to go, boom, let's go back into this place of stillness. And then just your tentacles go out again. And then you kind of re-feel the scene, you re-feel everything. And so that's kind of been, I don't necessarily do the shoulder thing, but just that same concept of like, okay, let's get back into, this is what I can do to get back to this place of creation, and then I go from there.
And that's probably good for everything. I mean, not just for dealing with troubling directors, but for dealing with any kind of intimidation probably that you feel with another actor or anything like that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, let me tell you, bro, I am so lucky to have worked with some fantastic actors in my life, and hopefully will continue to do so. But you know what's really interesting is that like that level of intimidation, like it really like excites me. Like I love that when I'm like, yo, I'm so impressed by this actor in front of me. I can't even handle, I can't even look them in the eye, you know? And then, because then that helps me, you know, bring that energy.
See, circling that energy back and using it for good rather than letting it bury you.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, man. And it's so interesting when I look back at some of the techniques that I have now. When I look back at my schooling, and I remember so clearly so many times being like, this is bullshit. Why am I this is bullshit. What is this, right? And okay, I'm just going to tick through it and just do it. It works, man. Like having some sort of a technique foundation to go back to one, and to know that one is real, and to go from that step, I think is absolutely golden.
On Westworld, you play a robot. Now, how does an actor, you know, seriously approach playing a robot without, you know, playing into all these terrible cliches?
So, you know, Westworld is a really strange, brilliant experience in that when I did the first season, they didn't tell me, and I still don't really know if I'm a robot or if I'm human.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yo, I've had like many in-depth.
Maybe that's better.
Right? Like they kind of wanted me to straddle that line, it feels like. And so what was difficult was trying to find the realistic experience of being in a theme park that does this kind of work. And so what I ended up doing is, instead of focusing on that aspect, I decided to focus on, and whether no one would see this or not, it didn't matter to me. I decided to focus on what would Felix's nights look like. Because all of my stuff is done inside, right? And I figured that he may have never seen the outside. Even if he is a robot, he doesn't know what the outside experience is like. So what does his nighttime look like? And I, you know, very much, you know, went in depth as to what that experience was going to be like. What kind of a bed does he sleep in? What does he have next to his bedside table? What kind of lighting is there? What gives him comfort? What doesn't give him comfort? And so because one thing that I could take control of is building that. Because in filming Westworld, things would come in so late, and so many parts of it were so secretive. They didn't show you any of the scripts. They didn't show any other scenes. They showed some actors that, but it's not all actors. And it was a very strange experience. So I thought, instead of me getting involved with, oh, can I see the script? Can I do this? Can I do that? If that's not going to be readily available to me, I can either go into one huff and puff of like, this is my craft. This is why I need this, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, they have their own reasons too. And it's not like they are the most respectful to the craft and experience. So I thought, well, there is method to this madness, and we had conversations about the character. So that's one thing that I hooked into. I thought, right, well, I'm going to build this. So no matter what they put me in, I will at least have that. And so the other part that kind of was an interesting surprise for me, a delight really, was, in every role, in every project, there is a way in, and I'm not always sure how that way in is going to happen, but when it appears, it is like magic, because you don't know if it's going to. It doesn't come in the same way for every project and every role. And so for Westworld, how it came was opera, because I was building what that world was like, that nighttime for Felix. I thought, well, what could he listen to that is out of this world, that would take him to this other experience? And so opera is something that I then use to get into this character. And so everything that he does in the show for me is an operatic move. And so even if he is a robot, if he's not a robot, if he's dealing with a robot, or if he's dealing with a human, it's an operatic experience. The first touch, the first interaction, the first connection of thought, the first connection of communication, the communication coming back. So that to me is how I built it. And what ended up being a really a blessing that I have that is that, we have these like 1.5 year gaps between seasons, and we don't know what's going to happen in the next season. And so I was able to, no matter what happens, pick that up again and use that as my entry point back into Felix and entry point back into Westworld.
And that's almost like an equivalent of that Olivier shoulder shrug, where you can just listen to put on the opera and fall right back in muscle memory wise.
Yeah, exactly. And that was my goal in doing that. For some reason, it clicked in for me with Felix.
Part of the great benefit of doing the show is I get to see movies sometimes and not knowing anything about them, just putting them on, not looking them up or anything. This is the way I want to see movies. I hate trailers. I just want to see things purely. And so I put on Phobias. This is a real, truly visionary horror film. I guess it's sort of like an anthology kind of thing.
Yeah.
You're the star of this. Tell me more about this and how you got involved.
I had I knew Joe Sill, who directed Robophobia, which is the segment, kind of the bigger segment that I'm in. And I knew him, and I knew he was a really kind of like visionary young director. And so I was really interested in, working with him, but didn't know how it was going to happen. And so then Eric Fleischman, who started Defiant Studios, another young, innovative producer, and just in the meeting with him, you just think like, whoa, you're thinking something like I'm already excited about how this is put together. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like on the other end. And so for me, you know, coming into the project and then working with Jess Varley, who did the piece kind of that threads it all together, it was so great to kind of work with people like that, because they were so open to creation, and they were so open to how I saw and wanted to talk about the themes that the project brings up. And so I knew that I needed to have some sort of a leap that needed to happen for the through line. And so I made the decision that in this world, this guy wanted to. I saw this random dude actually when that had half a shaved head, and he looked kind of crazy, and I thought, that's what I needed. Right? That's something that would be really inventive, because it's a way to signal or feel the almost like the wind around you differently. And so he kind of had like this punk element, you know, now that he goes and breaks back in to the system, and, you know, I'm not revealing anything, but like, and so that's what the decision I made, to kind of have this kind of half shaved head. And so I guess, you know, it was a really inventive project, and even the way that it was put together with 5 different directors, and the themes that they're talking about, I thought that was really interesting. Like, who talks about like not only robophobia, like, you know, AI fear and robots and drones, but who also talks about the fear of driving, you know, who also talks about, you know, fear of youth and teenagers, who also talks about guns and firearm and fear of that, and the fear of imperfection, all in one, and in all kind of done in this human lens through the genre of horror and thriller. And I'm so lucky to have worked on it, you know, and they were so open to how I wanted to create. Like in the segment of Robophobia that Joe Sill directed me on, I wanted him to have kind of like longer, shaggy, like very kind of grown out, kind of almost in a way could be considered agoraphobic as well. Like, you know, doesn't really care about the outside world as much. And so shit just grows and he doesn't care. But when he makes a decision to go do something about it, that part had to go. That part, there had to be like a shedding. So that's kind of the choice and decision that I made for that. And originally I thought, oh, maybe it's like a bleached or like a changing of the color of my hair or something like that. But doing the shave thing kind of really worked well for that.
Do you find that this kind of outside in kind of approach something that works for you?
Oh yeah, like, you know, there was a lot of talk in the difference in theories or techniques between an American form or a British or an Australian form, and I have to say that there is I love both. There is, and like I said, like there has to be I'm open to how it comes, which is why it's always surprising as to how it comes. But with robophobia and for phobias particularly, I knew that in this short amount of time, how are people going to be able to make the leap with me? And so I needed to have some sort of a change that happens, that manifests outside, that audiences would be able to see. So that was one key that I knew had to happen. And so that's where kind of sculpting the outside of it kind of helped. I do have to say, like, you know, one of my favorite times, and I hear this from a lot of actors actually, my favorite times in the process of getting ready to film or to perform on stage is the costume part. So it's an undeniable reality that, you know, having something like a jacket that weighs a lot, that has weight to it, you hold yourself differently. And so a different kind of haircut can offer that same that same aspect. You know, when I did Fast and Furious, one of the key elements that I knew that Morimoto had that was already written in the script was that he had bleached hair, that it was called the T-Hair Gang. And I had it was very difficult for me initially to understand where this character, in particular from Fast and Furious Morimoto, where that came from, because it was written in a way that my reaction to it was like, oh, it's just, you know, it's just a bad guy kind of vibe to him. And, you know, in a big kind of studio film. And so what I decided to do is take a step back and go, well, what does that represent for me? And what kind of bleached hair do I want? So then I went into an idea of this guy being a skinhead. And so I wanted to play Morimoto as a skinhead, but a Japanese skinhead for Japan. And in a way was very racist. And that was kind of his driving and motivational force, you know. And so that helped me. You know, when I did The Perfect Score, my first film in Hollywood, what have you, there was a beanie that I wore. And that's kind of like the stoner element. But what really cinched it for me wasn't the beanie. It was... I'd asked the costume designer. She was wearing jeans and they were kind of baggy, and she put me. You know, we were doing a whole range of fittings, and I asked her for a larger size, a really large size, and I said, because this guy feels like, you know, he seems neglected at home, and so they just buy him like 2 sizes large instead of just 1, right? Because he's in high school, he's still at the mercy of his parents. And then I thought, what really clicked it for me was, oh, I pulled out shoelaces and I tied that together and we made that his belt. And that is what really kind of cinched it for me. I thought, okay, this is his mentality. The beanie part covers who he is, but this is the reality of his life. He is stitching together things in life and just making it work for him. And so that's where part of the voice also came from. You know, it was like, oh, all right, let's do this. Like, you know, and then that happened.
It's so fascinating to think about that. I mean, I could just imagine how feeling that on my waist would be a constant reminder of what you just said. Like, and it's so interesting to try and find that with every single thing in some way, and how helpful that would be.
Helpful, because if you're able to take that moment and really carve that out and take ownership of that, that helps everyone. That helps the director, that helps the writer, that helps the other actor, that helps, you know, everyone on set and crew, because you're coming on board knowing what is important for this, already open because you've done discovery and you're in discovery with other people. That to me is such a blissful moment. Even just like physically holding it and pulling up your pants, suddenly that whole element of the character comes alive. And then for me, you know, with you know, Fast and Furious, what I just talked about, having the bleached hair, like what that experience of sitting down for those 4 hours to bleach your hair.
Right.
What goes through your head? Why are you doing this? It's painful. Where do you store that pain? Where does this guy? So shit like that would come out. And so that kind of helped me. And in Westworld, when it was a combination of things with that one, where opera was happening, and then I put on the robe, and it was done by magnets. And there were like kind of gills kind of underneath it, and it was made out of latex. And I sweated so much, and it felt like I was suffocating in a way. And so that is where part of the voice of Felix came. You know, it was like,
yeah.
Even like just barely getting it out, you know.
Interesting.
Shrink wrapped in a way.
Yeah. I can't tell you how wild it is to have seen you in that class 18 years ago, 19 years ago.
Yeah.
and to see you now, and it just gives me hope. And I don't even know if we ever met. I don't think I ever met you.
I don't think I ever met you. I would have remembered you.
Yeah. Because of that, because I have a lot of friends that are actors and I'm in the struggle with them, but just because I didn't know you, but I only knew you from that moment in that class, and then to peripherally watch you, and there's no going back now. You are an actor. That right turn.
Yeah.
I mean, just thinking about it now, you knew in yourself when things felt right about your path. Does looking back on it make you think mystically about this whole thing? Do you approach it now or thinking like, well, I followed my my bliss,
Yes.
and it paid off, and I knew it was right.
I have to remind myself of that. I think that's something that we don't talk about as much, but it's a daily constant reminder. And if you are able to build yourself up and build into your life ways of reminders for yourself that you are on the right track, that this makes sense, so keep going in the direction that things make sense, that excite you, then I think you're already ahead of the game if you have a sense of that feeling. Because I believe that there is the dots have been connected already, so you just have to be open to how the dots are happening, and not question what is the dot, what is the big, just know that it's there. And part of my job is just to be open to it, right? And not to the why, but just how do I do this? Okay, how do I respond to this feeling that I need to go right? To this day, as I talk about it, I can still feel it in me. I can still visualize it. I can still see out of the window of the bus. I remember the color of the seats of the bus, and for whatever reason, that really stuck to me because I was thinking about other people and other lives and was open to it, even just asking the question, and I'm so grateful that I did. I'm so grateful, mate, that I have this conversation with you. I'm having this conversation with you, and I feel really touched that you remember that moment at Edward Morehouse's class. And I remember that doing that scene, putting it together, and it was that same feeling. I remember thinking and it's that feeling of risk, right? Where he was known to be a hard ass in a way of
yes.
Are you kidding me? Get the fuck off this. This is bullshit. What is this? And he would just list stuff out. But I remember thinking, what's going to happen? And sticking to my guns and going nah, I'm going to do it. And I remember in that I taped on the floor, I love you. After I put down the
yes.
I taped it, and then I took my clothes off.
Yes! How can I forget that part?
Yeah, and because I remember thinking how are people going to know what this is other than the flower part? Because they can read the I love you part. And I was like, you know what?
Yes. I blacked that out until this moment.
That part.
Isn't that funny that I just remembered the rose petals and the feeling I had about you as a talented person. You know what I mean? And I forgot that part. It just went into me.
Yeah.
Leonardo Nam, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man.
Oh, absolute pleasure talking to you too, mate.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of The Gotham, formerly IFP. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.